friend. Welcome to the MindShift podcast. How are you doing today?
Doing good. Thank you for having me. Pleasure to be here.
Absolutely. Where are you coming in from?
Oh, I'm dialing from Bangalore, India.
Wow. What time is it over there? I know it's late.
Yeah, it's 9:45 p.m. But that's kind of
Okay.
our working hours because we cater to customers across the globe. So it's not bad.
Yeah, you've got 150 customers in how many countries?
It's
Something
actually
like that?
150 countries, 150
Oh,
countries,
wow.
over
I
10,000
undercut
websites. It's okay.
it. 150 countries. So yeah, you're working around the clock, right?
That's correct.
Awesome, awesome. Well, Ravi, tell our audience a little bit about yourself.
Sure. So I did an MBA from Duke. Prior to MBA, I had a master's in computer science, several years in Hewlett Packard. Pursued software engineering, over time did consulting for them, and then MBA, and then I was on Wall Street for a few years. I
Oh,
decided
okay.
that while and I was a stock analyst, used to cover stocks in New York, and I loved that job, but then I realized I was more for a longer term investing. So moved into venture capital. I joined a fund in North Carolina called Southeast Interactive, a 200 million fund. Did that for a few years, and during that experience, I had a special scenario where I had to go in and help an online business, a portfolio company of ours, and that got me, I built my digital chops there. I loved that experience, and then around 2011, I decided to move back, largely for personal reasons, back to Bangalore, and I said, let me build a startup. And so around 2012, after a few experiments, I started on my own. So this is my second startup, and this idea came out of the first one. So again, I have done the
Wow.
journey, as I tell folks, in the reverse direction. A lot of people become entrepreneurs, then invest and VC, and I've done the other way. So yeah, but I'm happy to do what I'm doing.
That's
So
good. That's good. So you left college and went to Wall Street. That actually, you and we didn't talk about this offline, but that was my goal when I got my finance degree. I wanted to go work on Wall Street, but did not do that, and started right into entrepreneurship and sales, and decided not to do that. So very interesting. So venture capitalist, that was nice, and then into your first startup. Tell us about your first startup.
yeah, so I think post I moved back, actually, I did explore even raising a fund or an angel fund and doing like a fund. I actually did a tie-up with a friend of mine. He had exited a startup, and then I kind of realized that while I was interested being on the other side of the fence, I enjoyed so much being in the trenches that after 6 to 8 months, I said, let's not do that. I'll build the startup. And that time I started looking for ideas, and
Right.
I couldn't be the coach. I wanted to be in the game, right? So I just jumped
Gotcha.
in, right?
I
And
love it.
and and I- and
It's a
then
great analogy.
Yep. And then I just looked up, and there were a couple of areas I loved. One was couponing and saving. At that time, India was booming. E-commerce was growing rapidly. So we built a coupon site for India and Southeast Asia. And during its peak, we were among the top players. So I did it for from 2012 till 16, and around 15, mid 15, we were looking for new channels. And then at that time, web push happened, and we
Wow.
started building a tool for in-house. We saw tremendous results from this, and again, SaaS was another thing in my mind that I felt was the way to go. Build a SaaS platform where you don't have to hunt every day for all the customers,
Yeah.
a recurring
Yeah.
revenue. And we were early in the platform, and so we turned around and built a SaaS product. So around 2016 Jan, I then launched Push Engage. So
Wow.
that's
We're
kind
going
of
to
the
come.
story.
That's a great story. We're going to unpack a little bit of that because that's a lot of good stuff going on in a short window of time. Because you started Push Engage around 2016, I think.
Yeah, that's correct.
Got it. Got it. Let's talk a little bit about, you've listened to some of my shows, and I like to talk about the journey from inspiration to realization. You passed through that dialogue so quickly. Let's talk about the idea from when you started the coupon website and the coupon product. What was the need in the marketplace that you saw that you could go in and step in and add value? Let's talk about that.
Sure. So I think when we started, we realized e-commerce was just picking up in India, and couponing as a concept was relatively new. And as a marketer, having participated in some of the US businesses, I realized it was an integral part of a purchase decision. And we
Mm,
felt it's going to increase in the market share. And we also, the other thing side of it was also my thinking that I think we know a little bit about marketing. I knew it was a hard space. to be very honest, that was probably the bigger kick. I was like, I'm going to get in. If I know any bit of marketing, I got to crack this space. So it was probably one of the other kind of, I guess, not a straightforward rational stuff. I mean, I have probably made a lot of decisions which don't, perfectly fit a cash flow model. And I joke to my friends that I have probably taken roles which are from, the highest paying to the lowest paying. So from being, on Wall Street to, being an entrepreneur and just steadily going down, but again, increasing in what I wanted to kind of do. So again, coming to the story, it was more around, hey, I think we know marketing, we know how to build a good product. There was a need and we felt it was a good cash flow business as well. So I just started with that and then we kind of grew out of it. And so we bootstrapped that business too. So
did you sell that business or did you just
so I had somebody else who then is taken over and runs that business for us since when I moved to this.
Gotcha. So tell me about the new company, and I want to spend a little bit of time as we do our interviews and discussion today about Push Engage. So we can share. We have a lot of entrepreneurs, marketers, leaders listen to this show. I want to talk about Push Engage, what it does, what the unique opportunity of where it sits right now in the midst of what we're going through. But in all that you've done, certainly you've probably had some setbacks as you've gone through your journeys, right? There's a lot of entrepreneurs that they get an idea, they start it, and then somehow they get knocked off their path. I mean, I don't know about the statistics in India, but the statistics in the United States, about 95% of most small businesses fail in the first couple of years. And 90% of those that make it past the first five fail in the next 5. But talk about what it takes during the tough times to stay focused on the mission and overcome those setbacks.
Sure. So I'll begin with a setback story. So I think the way, the product developed, we've kind of built an MVP like a classic way, right? And we launched it in the market. Again, one of the benefits I feel in hindsight I had was long back, I used to be a software engineer. In fact, I have a master's in computer science and I had written code. And so I knew that part. And then I probably took too long of a time to build all my skills. And then I went to business school and was doing finance. So I had the finance skills. And then finally, I was running an online business. So I had the marketing skills too. So I think that actually helped. I'll tell you where the story ends. We built an MVP and soon we started getting customers because we were the early players. And we knew something about marketing. Like I said, we always felt that's the thing, right? And if you have done a B2C marketing, I think B2B is, I won't call it a cakewalk, but it's easier, okay, if you know B2C. So we were getting customers, right? And then our product started having these technical issues because it can't scale. Remember, a notification product is bursty in nature by definition, because you want to send all the notification at once. So if you have 1 million notifications to be sent, they got to be sent right away because everybody wants that breaking news to go out right away. A flash sale offer. So that was the first big hiccup we hit after, say, 12 months, because we were growing fast and our architecture couldn't scale. Now, again, that's where some of my old technical skill, I mean, I had to roll up the sleeve and say, okay, let me do some common sense thinking. And there were folks who helped me, but that actually helped me. And I've over time come to depend a lot more on my own skills to do common sense thinking when I'm in critical or any of those challenges I face. And then brought in some folks, we redid the architecture, took 3 to 6 months, and then we scaled. Now, so today, for example, we do around 5 billion push notifications a month, and we know it's scalable, right? We are hitting our servers between 2 to 5 billion times in a month, right? So, and it's just scalable. It's microservices. And so we got it right. And so now we are like, tomorrow, if we had to go live with the largest newspaper in any country, we'd be fine. And we have many of those as our customers today. And so that kind of stuck. But I think early on, in hindsight, it was also good because we got hurt early on and we kind of took care of the technical debt in a right way so that we were able to progress, right? So that was the one big one I was going to say. The second one was along the journey around security, right? I mean, we didn't expect the hackers to attack us in the beginning. and I have had social engineering attacks on my email as well, right? Then we have learned our lessons from that, whether to have multi-factor authentication or whatnot. And I think those are the two things: scale and security early on helped us, build those things, and that kind of helped us with our product.
Yeah. You just talked about a couple of really important things, which is number one, you put an MVP out in the market. And for those listening to this that are not maybe software or startup, native, minimum viable product, which simply means getting a product concept into the market in the hands of an actual consumer, a user, so that in a way they can validate the idea. Number two, they can play with it, break it, give feedback and suggestions back to the developer, designer, and entrepreneur so that they can keep evolving the product. And obviously the biggest MVP that most people will understand is the iPhone, right? If they don't have to go any further than the iPhone continues to develop. And so that's what Ravi's company does. They put a product in the market as an MVP, and then lo and behold, it broke because the architecture, but that's what happens, right? How did you handle that pressure? Like, I know you said you were like, hey, I had to get in and roll up my sleeves. But when that kind of pressure mounts at that moment, what's going through your head?
Sure. So I think one is, how do you quickly do whatever it takes? We were on Amazon infrastructure, so whatever the cost be, right? So our server cost went up. So we did whatever scaling method was available to us, because mostly it's the databases or some of those layers which, have the challenge. So we probably bought too much of expensive hardware to kind of patch it for a while. And we deliberately did not take super large customers, right? If you came in and said, I got 50 million visits per month, we would probably postpone the deal. So we right-sized the deal and kind of waited for that time, which was not so good. But again, at that time, we were able to do that. So the other beauty I felt was, if you start early, you get to make little more mistakes on the way, because people are still building. I mean, in my hindsight, because the first product, the coupon one, we were kind of a little late or maybe in the middle, so we didn't have so much. Oh, in this one, I felt, okay, we were very early, so people will give us, a little more flexibility. And again, nobody is really caught up, right? Even today, for that matter, because we were early, we have built a product suite which is very competitive. I mean, I think most of other folks may not even have half the features in that sense, right? So we are way ahead of that. So that kind of
in terms of where push engage is today.
Yes, that's correct. Yeah, in terms of what we offer for engagement, etc. Yeah.
Gotcha. And we'll come back to that. I think we will. It's very interesting when you talked about it a minute ago. You said that, so the coupon site, you didn't get those setbacks as early on, but you're like kind of welcoming these. So you figured out, okay, hey, if the client was too big, we just knew we couldn't take that client on, right? That's a tough decision, right? Because in some cases you're an entrepreneur, like, man, that revenue stream would be fancy for our P&L, but you're like, that's going to that could put us in worse trouble, right? Kill our reputation. So those are pivotal decision points. So excellent leadership call, in my opinion, because I run a smaller agency. We got into a big deal and it did go sideways. I mean, I'm telling you, we had a big deal. We were good for about 2 years, and then we scaled through that into another part of the relationship, and things went a little sideways, and it didn't hurt our relationship. But I mean, the relationship ended, but it didn't hurt our reputation, but it was definitely the bad move.
Yeah.
So.
And I think I tell this to my sales guy: know the game we are playing and who we are serving, right? If we identify that, I mean, and it's always hard especially from a sales perspective, right? But I think that helps us. That brings the focus. I'll add one more point. That's also because we have been bootstrapped. I mean, I think I didn't mention this, but as a venture capitalist, I got on to invest in companies we sold also. Even when I moved back, I have done 7 angel investments, right? And I have exited few, right? So the point is, it's kind of very contrarian. I have probably made many contrarian decisions. This is one of the other ones, which is, hey, I could have probably raised money. I knew all my friends were VCs or investors, but hey, I didn't raise for both of them. And I know there are some pros and cons. For me, the pros were, when you bootstrap and build a company, you are really resourceful. You're really looking at the focus that you really need is there, right? The quality, I think that brings it, right? Specifically, I feel till you, let's say, hit $1 million in revenue, or maybe 2, if you can bootstrap your way, if there is a way, that's perfect, because then you can take the money and then you can grow rapidly versus, just putting too much money early on, which I think is, so that's just my view. I know it's not probably the most popular opinion out there. It also is very painful at times, because you may see somebody raising money and being able to attract the best talent. But I mean, I don't know. I mean, that's so far our, belief been. And I think it's worked out well, because we are conservative in some of those decisions, and it kind of helps. We don't do any deal which is not profitable for us. So
yeah, you touched on a couple of things. So again, this idea of the contrarian, right? You come up with this VC background, you've been on Wall Street, you've raised money, you've invested yourself as a VC, but then you started this as a bootstrap. And I'm just guessing, was part of that a lifestyle decision for you?
Yeah, so I think the first business we knew was never going to be super big. It was more built with a cash flow in mindset, the couponing one. And so we knew that's probably the right choice, right? Because if you layer on VC money, and you could on a business which is historically lifestyle. So look at couponing, right? The largest is Retail Me Not. That's the only player, right, which is as big, and it's IPO'd. At its peak, they were doing only 120 million in revenue. If the largest player in your space is only 120 million, I know it's huge, but that just shows the size is not big, right? So, so historically that has happened. So we kind of recognize that, and we build it as cash flow. Now in the second one, we did have choices. I'll tell you, part of it was I was a sole founder in this one, right? And I did not have the time. When we were doing reasonably well and able to manage our cash flow, I said, let's keep building the growth. Let the customers fund us, versus me taking a 3 months off early on. And so it was kind of that as well. I don't want to sound too smart in hindsight, but it was partly that. And it was also the recognition that we could still build it bootstrap, and we have kind of built that DNA, having built the first one like that. So, and it worked out.
Yeah, it's all good decisions, right? It's all looking at the opportunity. And so you did come in with the perspective of what it looks like when you VC, when you raise capital. There are different types of pressures. There's different types of responsibilities. There's different types of KPIs. There's different types of responses and responsibilities, right? And so you're like, hey, I love what you just said about bootstrapping. And for most of the people listening to this that are bootstrapping their company, they are essentially funding that business themselves. And like you said, you got it to a point where we're going to let the customers fund the growth of this business. A pivotal decision, but I think all of it is a decision that's in the game time moment based on your previous experience, right? Yep. I always tell people that your past experience leads you to the moment today that gives you perspective and decisions and possibilities to decide which channel or which route you're going to go with. So, congratulations.
Yeah, and bootstrapping is often not always the most popular choice as well. So just I must add that to you, right? And often when you say you bootstrap, a lot of people may think, hey, you probably were not able to raise money.
You couldn't raise money, right? Yeah, they think of the other side, right?
Yeah, but being an entrepreneur, I guess making many contrarian calls, at some stage you stop worrying about what others think, right? I mean, and I think that's the key thing.
Talk about that. Spend some time on that.
Right. No, I think that's key, right? So when I was in Wall Street, I can't tell you how much I was making, but it was in several million, whatever, right? It was huge, right? In 2008, a sell side analyst, whatever, right? So it was huge money, right? And so I didn't care what my friends thought or my classmate thought. I just wanted to find happiness or satisfaction in what I did. My one goal at that time, and it has always, at least for the last 10 years, has been when I die or when I pass away, I shouldn't have any regrets that, hey, I wish I did this, right? Or I wish I did this. So I like, okay, it doesn't matter. I've got enough. I mean, I paid my student loans in few years in Wall Street, and I was like, okay, I'm done. My responsibility is done. I can take a little bit of rest. My wife was still working. So I like, okay, it's fine. Maybe we don't get to buy a big house. It's okay. We'll buy a small one, or maybe we'll rent it out. It's no big deal, right? And so I said, it's better to follow the passion. So I just, to the core, I have followed that, whatever, my heart says, just do it. Don't worry about what others think, and just kind of focus on it. And it has helped, right? I mean, because it eventually matters how you execute that. So, and these are all distractions, right? So.
Yeah, I love that. He says, I just got to a point where I don't care what anybody thinks. Like, and that's interesting, right? Did you lose any friends along the way? Just kind of funny.
No. No. In fact, a lot of people have a lot of respect. I mean, from my school for Duke, I mean, I also helped them in admission. So I'm like the person they put in front and say, hey, he has made so many career switch. That's a classic MBA story. So it's not, I mean, I never burned any bridges. I mean, but what my point was, like, I just didn't fall into the traditional mold. And I think I feel it's true for most entrepreneurs too. They have to be a little thick-skinned, as I say, right? Because if you care too much about too many things, you're not going to move too much ahead, right? So you just have to be a little thick-skinned. That's just part of being an entrepreneur.
Yeah, and it sounds easier when you say that until someone's poking at your skin, right? So a lot of times, we
The
say you got to be
seasoning,
fixed.
the
Yeah,
seasoning.
right. You got to be able to deal with some scrapes and some scratches when someone's really clawing at you. But
Yeah,
but
yeah,
that's part of the journey, right? That's the beauty of entrepreneurship. The beauty of what you're saying though is, regardless of the bumps and bruises and people poking at your skin, you're going to survive. You're going to be okay, and if you stay focused, you'll get to where you want to be. Give me a couple of your, and I want to talk about your new company, your product today. But talk about if you were to give someone listening that's listening to this right now 2 or 3 tips on the development of thick skin. Let's just call it that. Like what really, because it's easy to say, like, and I've got thoughts on it because I've been doing this entrepreneurial thing for about 30 years. But from your perspective, what really does it take? 2 or 3 tips of what it takes
sure.
to develop thick
I think
skin.
what I'm going to say may sound, I don't know whether you call it spiritual or whatever. So I think the one big thing is to detach yourself from the moment, meaning
Mm,
be the witness or be a neutral observer of the situation. That's kind of the big one. And think from a pure objective. What's my goal here? I'm here to build a company. And as a company, what's my goal? Again, each company may have different goals. And I think I tell this to my salespeople, they know this very clearly. In my company, I may have a goal of revenue. I may have a North Star metric of growth, or I may have a cash goal, right? Being a bootstrap company, we focus a lot on cash and margin, right? So that's first. So we just focus on 1 or 2 key metrics. So again, the key decision making when it's about thick skin is, okay, to some extent, it seems calculated, but it's like, okay, yes, this person said something, it hurt my ego, but so what, right? What's the business impact of it, right? Can I step back and take my ego out? And I tell
mm.
all my sales folks or anybody for that matter, eat your ego, it doesn't matter, right? And just
Eat
see.
your
I mean,
ego.
yeah, exactly.
Eat your
Just
ego. It doesn't
that's
matter. I love it.
yeah, just I mean, just yeah, eat it out. It's hard. I know it's just hard, super hard. But if you do that, right, just step back, right? And I know we all have those moments because you'll have a customer who's really nasty and they're all kinds of customers, right? We still have to make them happy. We got to do that fine line between making sure we're doing what is right by the customer. And by the way, that's something that has succeeded us a lot, which is like doing the right thing for the customer without them being able to take undue advantage. So, but I guess the point I'm making is just go by the first principles, just detach yourself. I know it's hard, but just practice. It'll come. So
That's awesome. No, you're truly hitting on something there, and being able to remain objective to the moment, stand in a neutral place. I love that advice. Be detached from the moment. Sounds, I hate to say this, but sounds. I follow Deepak Chopra. Yeah, I've heard that phrase
yeah,
before. I've heard that phrase before in his work. Love that guy. But no, it's true. Being able to detach from. I always say that it's really important to distinguish between an outcome and your identity. Like, don't
yeah,
get those 2 things confused,
sure,
right? The outcome of the customer being upset is an outcome in a current present situation, but that's not a reflection on your level of integrity, character, or desire to solve their problem.
sure.
Don't carry that on your shoulders, right? So that's a little bit of what you're saying. I love it, man. I love it. You've been obviously, and I'm sure we could go on and on and on and on. I'd like to let people know about your product. I'd like to let people know what Push Engage does. So
Sure.
let's talk about the problem. First of all, tell everybody just once again, what is Push Engage? What does it do? And then I want to talk a little bit about from the marketing standpoint. So for those
Sure.
listening here that don't know how to take advantage of a tool like this and really use it to their benefit, I want to dig into that and unpack that. But tell us about Push Engage, what it does, and how you guys
Sure.
serve the world.
Awesome. Yeah. So Push Engage is a web push notification platform, and web push notifications came out with the intent of solving one problem, which is if you have a user who visits your site once and does not come back, right? So increasing the engagement, increasing your repeat visitors. And which sites need that? Every site needs it. It's like an horizontal technology, similar to what, say, email marketing does. In email marketing, you gather subscribers, you send them email, they come back. In push notification, you gather the same kind of subscribers, except that the subscription rate is 5 to 10 times higher because it's a single click subscribe. And then you can send similar targeted notifications. So for example, for you, Darrell, this is my campaign. You launch podcast and you release them. I know you have a newsletter, powered by a tool, and you send out an email to them saying, hey, I have a new podcast, come and listen to it, right? You can do the same through push notifications, right? And what more, the next level for you, I guess, is I see you have entrepreneurship, you have different categories. So I may say, you know what, I am interested in all the entrepreneurship podcasts. Do not send me the other stuff because that's not my interest. And I can indicate that. And every time when you send out alert for podcast for entrepreneurship, you'll send to that segment. So that's called segmentation. I think the key in notifications, and I hear that a lot from maybe folks my age or my generation, I guess, is, hey, I always click block and it's not interesting. And I think the way I want to answer is twofold. One is I see a lot of younger generation use notification as an extension of the site. It's like the site is coming to you. Like when my son plays that game, that Fortnite, he's just depending on the notification to tell him or her everything, right? So that's the key. The second thing is the use case is more around what is my need. Let's say I'm looking for this flight ticket from Las Vegas to New York, and I want to buy it when it falls below $300 round trip because that's a great deal. Now I want to get that alert, right? It's all about what do I want, and you make it available to me where I am, so I don't have to go searching for it. Or there's this new iPhone launch, I want to be alerted when it's in stock, right? So things like these are the big use cases. Of course, people use from variety of other things like breaking news or blogs or abandoned cart, and all of those are good uses. But then you got to think of that. And again, because this is just in the infancy, you see some of those use cases. And again, as a tool like our, we build all of these campaign out of the box. So it's super easy to just personalize and build this. But that's what we do. For e-commerce, increase traffic. For blog, increase traffic. For content side, increase traffic and revenue. So that's kind of what we do.
Awesome. I like the way you put that. So it's a web notification. So someone arrives at the website and they are interested in your content today, but they don't necessarily want to figure out when they're going to come back, but they want to know when you've created new content related to a category that they're interested in. They click a button, they'll see a pop-up. They'll click a button that says, hey, I want to be notified when this publisher or this website publishes again. And you're saying you can even set that campaign where I can actually choose a category if the publisher has made that available, right? So that way, if someone doesn't want to hear a health and wellness podcast, they can choose entrepreneurship and only be notified for those. That's actually really neat. I like what you put. You also said it allows the user to customize their own journey for what they want. In a way, it's like filtering, right? It's like, I want to filter what I receive. And this is in addition to email, because as we know today as marketers, email is becoming noisier and noisier and noisier. And of course, the spam filters based on whether it's Gmail or Yahoo or who are, these other services, they're filtering for us. They're sort of doing their own decisions of what's important to us. And I know it drives me bananas. Like I have to go in there and play defense against, stuff that I really want. I have to get Gmail out of the way. But anyway, that's very interesting. So how does someone, how technical? Because like a lot of people, I think, I'm going to be 50 this year. How old are you?
45.
Like mid-40s? Okay, mid-40s, yep. Some of our group and older, they're technologically challenged. And I hear it all the time because I have hundreds and hundreds of conversations with business owners and folks in the Gen X and baby boom category. Young folks are going to get this. It's easy for them. Let's talk to the audience that's Gen X and over about the use of a tool like this, because it's another piece of technology. But I don't believe your technology is all that complicated to set up and get installed and get it. Talk us through that. I know it'd be better if we had screen share, but just talk us through the simplicity of it.
Yeah, so I think it's just 2 lines of JavaScript. Just add that to the site and you start gathering subscription, right?
Yeah,
and
for those people that are not code savvy, that's 2 lines of characters. Just to keep it.
Correct. That's correct.
2 simple sentences of characters that don't spell words.
That's correct. That's correct. And then the beauty of it is because this was built by a marketer for marketer. From our dashboard of the application, you can configure all these rules around segmentation. And I think why I spoke about segmentation to you is that's where we start. We say, don't send to all, send to what the user preference is. Again, whatever user preference I'm talking about is all a best practice. It totally depends on the website owner to implement it, right? But we provide all of those right from the starting. So you can just say, hey, anybody who listens to a podcast on entrepreneurship, maybe you can assume that they're interested in entrepreneurs. So things like those rules And so gather subscribers, segment them, and then we have those personalized campaigns which say, okay, if I clicked on, let's say, add to cart, or if I did some action, say, I watched this shirt for 5 times in 7 days. That means I'm obviously very interested in it, right? So then can I send a notification about that? So again, some
Right.
of those are more advanced, maybe require a little more of extra stuff, but then that's like the super personalized. That's where we kind of specialize in hyper personalized 1:1 notification for an individual. And again, we have like I told, right, ton of customers around the globe using it in e-commerce and content sites or media
Yeah,
sites.
you touched on the key phrase right now. Today, if you're sending the same message to everyone, you are at the top of the list of a marketing failure.
Mm-hmm.
Today, it's just, first of all, there's no excuse for it. That's the reason why unsubscribe rates are rising and people are blocking their email, because we're sending the same thing to everyone. So just to discuss segmentation for a quick minute, this means, for example, if you have a list of 10,000 people, but 1,000 people have been browsing, for example, your e-commerce page for this specific product, if I'm understanding correctly, Ravi, you can tailor a notification invitation just for that particular page, and they can choose. Is that right?
Yeah, that's one. Or you could infer from their browsing behavior once they have, let's
Okay,
say,
so their
let's say,
behavior based on the
yeah. So
based
let's
on the
say
tracking.
if I read news and I read U.S. politics a lot, then somebody can infer, okay, he's interested in U.S. politics,
Got it.
and so a content site can automatically place me in a segment. In some cases, you can ask the user if you want it, or in all the cases, but it's totally
Mm-hmm.
up to you. You can infer a lot from what they are doing on your site and use those things to kind of send stuff that you're interested in, right? So
So
I think
behavior-based insights, basically.
that's correct. That's correct.
Got it. Yeah, and so that fits in well to everything else that's going on online. If we think about it, like on Facebook, we can show content to people that have only engaged with a certain post or a certain video. If we're on YouTube and our websites, all of our analytics tools, it's such a beautiful time to be doing marketing today.
Yeah.
I tell people all the time that when I was growing up in marketing, I did a lot of offline direct mail, newspaper, radio, and I could never, I had to optimize those conversion rates with very little feedback loop.
Yeah.
Like the only feedback loop I got was when someone wanted to buy or engage in the closer step to the sales process. Today, we can see that, hey, this user's come back to this page 13 times in the last 90 days, trying to see when this flight's going to go down in price. And we now can be very specialized based on that behavior. So important. I think it's a super critical piece to a marketing channel. So you talked about e-commerce. Talk about use case for a professional services company, if you can. Do you have any professional services type companies that sell more consultative, more of a consultative service?
Yeah, so I'll begin by saying the top two industries, e-commerce and then content, meaning newspapers, media sites. We have a ton of newspapers around the globe use us for breaking news and otherwise. And then for every industry, there is a use case, whether it's a gaming site. Coming to your question on professional services, I can quickly tell you 2-3 use cases. Most places you are filling a form where you're saying, hey, contact me, etc., etc. And sometimes there are people who just abandon filling the form, which is they start filling the data, they have not given you email, they're not given you the phone number, and they just left, right? And so for those, we could just nudge them a little and see if we can overcome the objection which they might have had and say, hey, I think you forgot to fill the form. Do you want blah, blah, blah consultation or something? So that's like for the services industry, use case number one, form fill or inquiry or lead mechanism, right? Number one. And number two, it could be services companies may have case studies, right? Like I was talking about podcast or case studies. And the idea there is you're nurturing your customers. You're not trying to close the deal right away. You have this set of customers who want to know about the content, or maybe let's say I'm in e-commerce. I want to know the next e-commerce case studies in my area that comes out, right? So next time you publish, you can nurture your customer. So those are the top two I could think of. But again, depending on what kind of professional service, we could talk about more campaigns. I mean, whether it's a alert for calendar or a webinar. I mean, think of it as an alert. You can use it in a ton of ways.
So. Gotcha. And talked a little bit about the pricing of the tool. It's super affordable, I believe, right?
Yeah, exactly. And so to that extent, we cater to anybody who pays, say, $29 all the way to $10,000 a month. So it just, and today some people ask, hey, who's your customer? we are a tale of two segments. One is like a standard, any individual, small company, medium business, large business, and to an enterprise. So we have two separate segments in that sense. So we cater to both of them, and it's affordable for everybody because it just starts at $29. And then we have a free plan too. So you can use
Gotcha,
the free
gotcha.
plan.
How can people find your site?
Just go to pushengage.com and just
Pushengage.com.
yeah, and then just check out our free plan or take a trial. So
Awesome. We'll make sure we have that in the show notes as well for everyone listening. But yeah, check out Push Engage. I'm actually going to do that as soon as we get done with the call. I have played with a few other push notification tools out there. And I'm definitely going to install your tool. I have a new e-commerce site that I'm launching around the MindShift brand. So I think I'll put it up there. And
You're an ideal customer. I didn't realize.
Yeah. So it's, it's a side project, but we're developing some materials, some clothes, some apparel, some coffee mugs, stuff like that around the brand. So let's tell me a couple of things. What are you passionate about outside of the world of business, VC, entrepreneurship? What are you passionate about?
I think I've kind of reached, you asked my age, right? I was going to say that's not a fair question, but it's okay. So I've reached a stage where, people call it a midlife crisis or whatever. So I think I have reflected a lot in the last few years. And I think I've come to, recognize, like in the past when I was younger, I had ambition. And I still have, right? Okay, I want to build X company. But I think my lens has changed slightly. My lens has moved to, okay, what is the impact I can make on this world? And when I say impact, it's about not inward looking outward. It's like, what am I doing on this planet that helps others? I know it sounds very cliched, but that truly is where my headset is right now. It's like, okay, that's my metric. Okay, so I build this company. Let's say it helps 10,000 businesses. 20,000 people are affected. I have employees, let's say 25. We cover insurance for everybody. So it's like 85 individuals impact. So I have an impact on 20,000, 85 people. Now I want to do stuff which impacts millions of people.
2 million, right.
So that's what we'll see how it goes, but that's what I'm trying to figure out what to do. And so I do a lot of stuff otherwise as well in volunteering and otherwise, but that's kind of, I guess, where my headed towards. So
I love it. I see, and that's why I love having people like you on the show. It's like, okay, look, I can start a business. I've got that covered. I did a second business. I got that covered. I got all the degrees. I went to school. I did Wall Street. And you know what? And we all get to the point where like, okay, so what's next? and you're like, look, I could add all this up and I've helped 20,000 people. Well, I don't know how I'm gonna make that 2 million, but that's the idea now. So I love that. I love it. Do you have any coaches or mentors that you are constantly looking to, sort of as, not necessarily they're working with you daily, but people that you look to and say, hey, I know that I'm going to keep an eye on this person or this person speaking into my life?
Sure. So I think I do read a little bit of philosophy and spirituality, if I may. Mm-hmm. And I think one of the Western philosophers who will jive with the philosophy I kind of adhere to is a person called Ram Dass, the famous author of Be Here Now. So you can check that out. And I think some of that is around that. So for example, I'll give you an example, like when we went through COVID or when we go through any crisis, right? I think there are many ways to react to it. I'm trying to learn to have a little more gratitude in life for what we have. I think I shared this before the show. Like, I'm really thankful that we can run our business remotely. And yes, we had travel customers. We had people who were from the travel industry, and that portion of our business did suffer, right? Maybe X% went down, but that's still okay because we are surviving, right? And we were always bootstrapped, so we were conservative, right? So, but think about the businesses who are not able to. So I think one of the things I've developed over time, and I think in some of those, I guess, spiritual teachers or things that I've learned is around, okay, having a sense of gratitude for what you have, right? You may think you are probably the unluckiest, but if you step back and think, you'll find how lucky you are to be where you are. So I think that just helps a lot, right? The second one, again, I'm just probably adding too much, is this thing around kindness, right? So that's something that I've been working on. And kindness is something that if you practice, it just spreads. And kindness is not about just, giving money or just helping. It's just, if you see somebody, if you smile, right? And you just maybe have a little more empathy for the other person. It's just kindness. Or maybe somebody is in a rush, give them your spot. Or maybe somebody is cutting lanes, just don't get into heated agreement. So those are the small things, but if you develop them, they make your life much more pleasing. So
those are absolutely critical. I mean, two things, right? Having a little bit more gratitude and just being a little bit more kind. Like, how important was that parking spot? Like, for real.
Yeah, no, I know. I think there's still a lot I have to learn, but that's so I've come to kind of synthesize and crystallize or like narrow down the life's fundamentals to these, right? So those are more important. Rest all, what when I was younger, I used to think like the bank balance or other stuff. They're just, okay, they're the side products, but this is what really matters. So I'm working on those.
So important. And I think it's just the awareness, like being aware of what it is that you're actually working on. Like,
sure.
You've shared a number of key insights, both on the mindset side of things, as well as the tactical and structural side of growing a startup, and sort of the meshing of the VC background, the education background with the actual execution of an idea, which is what we talk about here, which is an idea from inspiration to realization. So I've really enjoyed having this conversation with you. I'd like to ask you one final question. I generally ask it to a lot of my guests. It's a big question. You may have already covered somewhat of it, but if it was to all end today, what would you want people to remember you by if you did not wake up tomorrow?
Sure. Yeah, no, great question. That's kind of what is driving me to make a bigger impact, right? I mean, I think if somebody felt that I made an impact in their life, which helped them becoming a better person, that's all I care about, I guess. So the more people say that, that's what really matters. So
that's awesome.
That's what I would say. Yeah. Yeah. So
awesome.
Pretty simple.
Ravi Trivedi, thanks for being on the MindShift podcast. It has been a very intriguing conversation. I hope everyone gets out to pushengage.com that has a business, that has a website. If you're in the media space, if you're an e-commerce, professional services, if you've got a window, a place on the web, a digital home where you need to increase engagement, you should definitely check out pushengage.com. Ravi, thanks so much. Enjoy the rest of your evening over in Bangalore.
Thanks for having me. Thanks, everyone.
Hey, thank you for listening to the MindShift podcast today. Listen, don't be a stranger. Reach out, connect with me on social media. Let me know what you're thinking about the show, what you think about these episodes. You can find me pretty much at Mr. Darrell Evans almost everywhere on social media. I look forward to chatting with you then. Bye for now.